All right, it's loading, so.
By the way, I don't have to talk
All
loud, do I?
right, so we are live.
Oh,
All right, guys, so we're live here with Flexi, and we're using YouTube this week, and so we're live on YouTube. So one of the things that we wanted to talk about this week is color. Dean has got a great presentation that he's done in terms of color that goes really well with Flexi. We're actually going to split this up into 3 sections. So stay tuned for each week. We're going to kind of cover a different section, mainly because this presentation is kind of designed for a big class over several days and whatnot. So it's a lot of material to cover. This first week, you can see, is we're going to talk about the color workflow 101, ink costs, and things like that. So again, you can see we're in a little bit different format this week, trying some new things out. And so what we're going to do is start out while people are coming in, watching, and joining us here live. We're going to just grab some questions that we had over our Facebook over the last week and just kind of address a few of those while people are joining us on the YouTube stream. So one of the questions that we got this week is Adobe plugins. You've heard of those, Dean, right?
oh yeah.
Our software works with those. That's the good thing. And eye candy and alien skin are probably the most common ones.
Yeah.
Software does support these Adobe plugins. In fact, all you have to do is install them inside of the Adobe plugins folder in the SAi folder, put them right in there, and boom, they'll show up under the bitmap menu, and you'll show Adobe plugins, and then you'll see eye candy and aliens pop right up. So any kind of Adobe plugins that you want, they are supported. If you have any questions on where to install the plugins or anything like that, our tech support knows how to do that. But yes, we do support that. And that was a great question that came from, I think, Doug. Anyway, great question.
Yeah. Hey, Aaron, I got a follow-up question on those plugins. Are there any limitations or caveats or things that end users should know about Flexi Designer's plugin support? Is there certain versions of Photoshop that won't work, or plugins, or what kind of problems do people have when they call in?
That's a good question. We don't support the 64-bit versions yet. So when you download Alien Skin and Eye Candy, one of the tricks you do want to do is make sure that you download the 32-bit versions.
Okay.
And then just make sure that they go into that folder. So into that Adobe plugins folder inside of Flexi.
And then you have to restart Flexi, and then Flexi will see
and then you just restart Flexi, correct? Yep.
Okay, great.
So
great question.
It's one of those questions. Yeah, we actually get quite a bit in tech support, and so that's why I thought we'd address it here. As someone asked it on Facebook, let's find out. So another question that came in from, funny enough, a different Doug. He had a question about an image that he was importing, and this he actually had a version of Flexi that only does cutting, and so he had imported a bitmap and was wondering why it wouldn't cut. So just some tidbits of information here. We kind of got him up and running, but the solution there was the problem is that he had a bitmap, and so obviously you can't cut a bitmap. It has to be vector artwork in order for you to cut it. So in that case, we would have to do one of two things: either retrace or redraw the text that he was looking to import, or we would simply do a vectorization of that and then turn it into vector. So one of those two options be good.
Probably there's a third option, Aaron. That's they can call tech support, or they can get some training from you, right?
So
we can help them out with that too.
Right. We actually have another question here. I think this come in live.
Oh, great. Who's it from?
How do I make how how do I custom make my fonts to look like steel or Gothic fonts? So there's obviously several different things we can do there. If you have a font, there's obviously different font styles that give you a look like that. Or there's even different things that you can do with text. So you could fill in text. So let's say you had a background image or some kind of a pattern fill that you'd like to add. You can actually add a pattern fill right into Flexi. That's one of the things that you could do. Or you could even use those alien scan and eye candy to create different effects for text, like an emboss or kind of like a beveled effect, or different things like that that are necessarily not in Flexi by themselves because they're more bitmap features or they're plugins for Photoshop. So you can add those effects to a text. So you could do it several different ways. You can, if you actually look in the default color swatch for Flexi, down at the bottom, one of the default color swatches is actually like a little steel pattern. And so you could apply that to text. There's actually a way in Flexi to define a pattern, and you can do that right from within Flexi.
Aaron, that sounds like a good topic maybe for the future on a live.
Yeah, it actually is.
We can do another live thing. We'll talk about fonts and how to make steel and use the plugins, how to use the alien skin. Yeah, let's do that. That's a great idea.
And then the last question that we had last week that I saw on our Facebook was somebody asked where their activation code was. That's an easy one. All you have to do is go to www.saicloud.com and it'll take you right to our website. You log in with your email address and password, and then you will see all of your licenses and everything listed right there. So that includes your activation code, download links, and any kind of information you need. So if you're looking for anything regarding your activation code, Flexi 11 or newer, you're going to find it on saicloud.com.
Great.
All right. So I think that kind of covers all the questions that we had for the moment. Hey, guys out there who are watching live, ask us some questions. We will go through the entire presentation today on color, and then we have a slide at the very end saved for questions. So go ahead and type those in at any point, and then at the end, we're just going to go ahead and address all those questions. But Dean is going to kind of take over from here, and we're going to do the slide presentation and go from there. So Dean, take, and then we'll do some questions.
All right. Great. Okay, so we're going to talk about color today. How many sign shops have we got right now watching this live? Can you give me a number? I can't see on my screen how many we got. How many people are out there?
4 people here today.
4? Okay, let's start with 4 people. Let's talk. So go to the next slide. All right, so today, this is a trilogy. We're going to talk about a bunch of things with color, but today we're going to specifically talk about just the basic color management workflow in your shop, okay? This is specifically designed for sign shops and print shops that have a vinyl cutter and have 1 or more inkjet wide format printers and want to get some color consistency across their vinyl and their printers, okay? So, and this is all about your ink costs. So go to the next slide. Okay, so the dirty little secret about ink is that it is very, very expensive. In fact, the inkjet ink that's in your printers probably costs more than blood does, human blood. So it's very, very important that you keep an eye on how much ink you're actually using on your prints. Do you know exactly, in fact, as a sign shop owner or someone in the shop, do you know how much ink you actually use on an annual basis? As we go around and talk to sign shops, some shops, a small sign shop with 1 or 2 printers, they may spend $30,000 a year just on ink. And we're going to show you some ways that you can radically save on your ink costs, but still have your color quality be really good and keep your customers happy, okay? So this is really about ink savings. So as we go out and we talk to different sign shops, in fact, let's move this over here. As we go and talk to sign shops, there are 3 main things that sign shops complain about in terms of color. And the color challenges. The first one is color consistency. Sign shops really struggle getting consistency across devices over time. You print something out today, a customer comes in a couple of weeks later, a month later, and they want the same color. How do you get that color consistency over time and over devices, right? And even over media. And then predictability. How often do you want to get the same color, right, across jobs, or be able to know what color is going to be like before you actually print? And the next one is obviously spot color matching. When we go into sign shops and we ask them what their biggest color challenge is, a lot of them say, you know, I've got the basics figured out, but spot color matching is a real problem for me, and I'd really like some help with that. So this presentation is going to explain all three of those. So the bottom line is, how much is bad color costing you? When we go into the typical sign shop and we ask them, you know, how much are you throwing away? How much spoilage do you have? How often you're throwing away a finished print and you're just throwing it away in the dumpster? And quite often sign shop owners will say, I don't want to know. So just ask yourself, how often are you filling the dumpster? That garbage container that's in your print area, how often are you filling that out and putting it out in your dumpster in the back? Theoretically, you should never have to throw away a print for color, right? But if you have bad color in your shop, you're suffering with bad color, how much is it actually costing you? Not just in ink and media, but also on time. Every time you do a print that has bad color that you can't sell, you have to do it again, right? And then opportunity. I talk to a lot of sign shops that are actually afraid to take on jobs because they're afraid they might get the color wrong. They might run into a customer that has some color expectations that they may not understand. So, you know, there's a lot of opportunity cost. So once you get a dial this in and you get good color in your shop, you're going to be able to take on more print jobs and potentially get some other customers that want better color. So next slide, Aaron. All right, so solving your top color headaches. So these three things right here are going to solve a lot of your problems. The number one thing we're going to talk about today is the color settings in your workflow. What are your color settings in every single one of the steps in that workflow? First of all, what color settings are your customers using? What color settings are you using in your design application? And what color settings are you using in your RIP software? Just one little change there can cause you all kinds of color problems. And also, we're going to talk about color consistency and predictability and spot color matching next week. All right, next slide. All right, so before we talk about fixing bad color, we need to have a better understanding of what good color is. And I'm sure a lot of you guys run into this all the time. What is good color? So we look at this image here and we see 4 different images. We don't know which one's the right one. Let's say you printed something out for a customer and you didn't have a conversation with them about color. Is it okay? Is it the right color? How do you know? Is there some measurement device? What's the gold standard of what good color is? Next slide, Aaron. It's whatever your customer is willing to pay for. The customer is actually the gold metric for what good color is. A lot of you guys might actually not have really good color, but hey, if your customers are buying it, that works for me, right? All right, next slide. So when it comes to good color, you know, you can invest time and you can invest money to try to improve your color in your workflow. And I'll tell you, some shops, they can get obsessed with this. Some print shops will spend thousands of dollars and they'll go take training courses to try to improve their color. And there is a point where you're spending too much money on your color investment, right? There's this sweet spot where you can spend maybe a little bit of money or maybe no money and get really good results. And that's what we're going to talk about here, is those low-hanging fruit things you can do in your workflow to improve your color out of the chute, and some low-cost measurement devices that might be able to help as well. All right, so good color always starts with the customer, okay? It doesn't start with the device. It doesn't start with your printer. It starts with the customer. And it starts with what the color the customer wants that they have in their head, right? Now, this is really, really important because for a lot of print shops, their secret sauce is actually the color experience that their customers have when they come in the shop and they get that print and they go, wow, you nailed the color. That color looks fantastic. It actually is a differentiator between print shops, and it absolutely can be a differentiator between sign shops as well. So we want to go for that experience, right? So to get that experience, we need to get inside the customer's head and understand how they see and see color and how they expect color to be reproduced for their jobs. So there's a couple of things we want to see. These are typical jobs that you will see in a sign shop that come in from a customer that you need to get done. And there's a couple of questions you want to ask. First of all, you want to look for memory colors. You'll see those bananas on the side. If you get that, you kind of have an idea of what bananas are supposed to look like. If it comes out of your printer and it's green or blue, you know those bananas are supposed to be yellow. That's a problem, right? When you get a job like this Zumba Fitness, are those spot colors that they want to make sure match dead on? If they are, what are the names of those spot colors? What are the RGB or CMYK colors? Especially what are the names of those spot colors? You've got to find out those spot color names from your customer. And then also something like this ground beef taco sign, maybe that customer just wants a green and a red, and it doesn't really matter. It's not that important. You don't have to worry about what the names of those are. Just ask the customer. Every time you see a big block of color in a print, ask the customer, is this a spot color? What kind of a green do you want? Just communicate that and take a couple of notes about what kind of color expectations they have. These kind of questions are going to help you a lot coming down the road when you get those prints out. All right, next slide. All right, here's a good example. If you go to Google right now and you just type in Coke Red, and you're going to get all these images from your Google image search. This happens all the time at print shops, right? Somebody comes in and says, I just want Coke Red, or I just want this blue or this red. And you Google it, and which one of these is the right Coke Red? That's a very good question. How are we going to get the right color? So this is a day-to-day challenge if you don't understand color management and if you don't have your color profiles set up correctly. So we're going to get to that. So let's talk about the very, very basics in a print shop or sign shop color workflow. Here's what's happening with those colors, all right? You've got this color that you want to get, like a Coke Red. It's just some red color that somebody says they want a Coke Red, or a business card, or a t-shirt, or some color that they have, a brochure. And then you get that file from them, and you put that in your design software, or you get it from a camera, and it stays RGB. And if your color management settings are slightly different, you're going to slightly tweak the color. And then when you open that in your RIP software, like Flexi Production Manager, now we're going to convert that to CMYK. And again, the color might change. Then if your profile settings aren't correctly, by the time you get that printed, you're going to have some challenges. So there's ways that you can set up your settings in your workflow. And if you get the settings the same in every step in that workflow, it's going to solve a lot of these color consistency problems. So let's go to the next slide. So for consistent color, here's what you need to do. You need to go into all of your software in your sign shop and your print shop, and you need to make sure that the color management settings for the workspaces and the output profiles are all the same. All right. Now, this is fairly industry standard. I know that a lot of the manufacturers out there, HP, Muto, I think Mamaki, even Roland now, they have default settings that they recommend that you should put in the RIP software and Production Manager. And right now, today in Flexi19, these are the settings. But if you've got an older version of Flexi, your default settings may not be the same. If you're using Flexi Designer, Adobe Illustrator, Photoshop, or Corel, you also want to make sure that you use these exact same settings there. Now, it may be too small on your screen to see those settings. So we're going to go to the next slide and show you it. It's important that you go to that dialog box in every one of these softwares and make sure that they're the same. So when you're using any kind of workspace or input profile in whatever software you're using, either design or RIP software, make sure that the input profile is sRGB, okay? Now, I know that some print shops and sign shops think they should be using ARGB or Adobe RGB. That is a slightly bigger gamut, but it has a different white point. And so if you're getting sRGB files from digital cameras or from the web or from designers, and you're in your shop, it's ARGB, you're going to have a problem with your yellows, and your reds might come out yellow. They might come out orange. So if that's a problem, it might be that your input profile is not sRGB. Your input profile and your workspace profile should always match the same color space as the image, okay? So what about CMYK? Both in Adobe Illustrator and Photoshop and in Flexi Production Manager, there's a CMYK profile, and you want to make sure that you're using Grackle 2006 coded as that profile. Now, in older versions of Adobe as well as Flexi, that's probably going to be something like swap or swap coded or swap standard. If you're not in the United States, if you're in Europe, it might be something like FOGRA standard. If you want to do FOGRA, then stay FOGRA, but everything's got to be FOGRA. In North America, it's Grackle 2006 coded. So the reason I say that is because your designers, probably the CMYK stuff that they're doing is going to be in the Grackle 2006 as well. If you've got problems with your gray balance with CMYK images coming right in from customers and you open them right up and they've already got a gray balance problem, it could be because you've got a different CMYK workspace or output profile or input profile than your image. So that's a heads up there too. There's a checkbox in Flexi that we might want to show at some point where you can select whether you want to use embedded profiles if you've got them included with the file. Both TIFF, JPEG, and PDF files can include an embedded profile. Make sure you check that box. Otherwise, you're going to overwrite it with something else and have problems. Rendering intents. A lot of confusion about rendering intents. You're going to have a lot of problems with rendering intents unless you try to use the relative color metric. That is the recommended standard. If you try to use the other ones, you might get, your colors might blow out. Your flesh tones might look pink. So relative color metric is the way to go on your rendering intents. That's across the board. I recommend relative color metric for all of them. So long-winded, but definitely important. That'll solve like 60% of the color problems out there as long as you have those defaults correctly. Okay, I'm curious, do we have any questions so far? Any questions on color that we're going to answer at the end?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay, how many people do we have? Do we still have 4, or did I lose anybody?
We just have a couple people, it looks like.
Okay, less than 4. Okay. That's fine. That's fine. This is the first time we've been on YouTube Live, right?
Yep.
Okay, so the next big thing is it's absolutely critical that whenever you're printing to a wide format inkjet printer that you use ICC media profiles. You may be using an older version of Flexi that may not be turned on by default. You may not have ICC profiles. If you're printing to a printer without ICC profiles, you're going to be struggling with your color. So definitely use ICC media profiles. ICC stands for International Color Consortium. This was specifically designed to make color consistency and predictability a lot easier for you. They can simplify your color management. They can also save you ink. Especially if you've got profiles that are optimized for ink usage, you can save ink by the profiles that you use. They also can prevent over inking. If you've got an ICC profile that's actually optimized for ink usage, there's a point, especially with solvent ink printers, eco-solvent printers, where you can actually over ink and the banners won't last as long outside if they've got too much ink on them. It'll actually affect the material. So having good ICC profiles actually saves you warranty issues with your prints. And it also allows you to access new printer modes. You may have a printer that only has, if you've only got an ICC profile for, let's say, a 600 DPI, but you want a faster print mode, maybe you want to do just bidirectional 1-pass or 2-pass, all you need is an ICC profile, and now your printer now has the capability to print twice as fast, 4 times faster. So ICC profiles really unlock all of the color and the speed potential of your inkjet printer. All right. So let's go on to the next. So how do you get these magical ICC profiles? The first place that you can go to get ICC profiles in your Flexi software is in the cloud window. If you go to your cloud window on the side, both in Flexi Designer as well as Production Manager, there's a little yellow icon there that says Profiles. And if you click on it, it'll take you to our profile website where you can find and download ICC profiles for just about every printer that is out there. We have full-time people that just profile printers, and we're constantly updating that library. So we'll show you that in a second. Aaron, in a minute, we're going to see that, but let's talk about these other ones first. If you can't find a profile in that little magical yellow icon in the cloud window, also you can go to printer manufacturer websites. A lot of them have libraries on their websites for media manufacturers. You can also go to the media manufacturer websites and get profiles. A lot of them have libraries as well. And if you really want to take the challenge, you can build your own ICC profiles, but they're fairly easy to find and they're fairly easy to get if you know what you're looking for. So Aaron, can you show us really quickly in Flexi, let's say we don't have any ICC profiles, or we want to see if there's any more ICC profiles. Maybe there's something new for our printer. How do we do that in Flexi?
Yeah, so I'm going to pull up Flexi here. And we
want to go to Production Manager, right?
We can do that in Production Manager or in Flexi.
Oh, either way, show us.
We've got our cloud window, and the way that I access that is just this little cloud button here.
Oh, we got to move the
Go
picture
to
here.
the view menu and turn on my cloud page here.
And then there's and then there's printer profiles there.
Window. And I'm going to click on printer profiles. That's where I'm going to get it, and it's going to automatically load me into
Beautiful.
And here's all the list of our printers. So let's just say we pick Roland, for example. Now we've got a huge list of profiles for the Roland. And each one of these is designed for specific models. So if you don't see your model here specifically, choose the generic one. And it'll download a ton of profiles for that model.
Right. And if someone's already got that printer and they download this today, they're going to get the latest and greatest set of profiles we have for that printer.
Exactly.
That's an incredible resource there. Okay. And then how do we add them in Flexi? So let's say I've downloaded the zip file and now I want to add those profiles into Flexi. How do I do that?
You can do this one of two ways, but I'm going to show you through Production Manager. So we're going to pull this up. I'm just going to go to my default job properties of my Muto printer here.
Yeah.
And this is going to pull up a window here in a second. And I'm going to go to the third tab, which is my color management tab. And then I am going to, well, by default, this is probably going to say no color correction if you don't have any profiles.
Which is bad. That's really bad, right?
Exactly. And so now we want to set the output profile, and this is where we can just click add.
So just add.
I hit add, and I can grab all these profiles
Oh, wow.
at the same time, hit open, and it just pulls those right in.
It'll bring them right in, and then you can select them. Fantastic.
And then you would be able to select them right from the list here.
Oh, wow, look at that.
That's adding it into Flexi, so pretty easy.
Pretty easy. Now, what's really nice about Flexi as well is everything related to that print mode is in that one ICC profile. There's not a bunch of weird, funky things. You bring that profile, you've got your ink limiting, your calibration, everything. It's ready to go, and you can print.
Exactly. Yep. So you've got your
Right.
your resolution, everything, your color mode, and all predefined for that profile. So you know that's what it was designed for when it was printed. So for example, this one was designed for 720 1440, CMYK, light cyan, light magenta, white, and metallic.
Right. And so if you've got a printer and you want to unlock a print mode that you don't have a profile for, you just get the profile and then suddenly you can print in that print mode.
Correct.
And do we get questions like that a lot? People asking, how do I print that print mode, or how do I get a profile?
Yeah, that's a very frequent question. We can also change the color mode here. So this is the color mode that it was that you can change. Now, one thing about changing this is that if we go too far away from the original that it was the original variant that it was produced with, we may or may not get the best results.
Right.
Just
Yeah,
be
that's
aware
important.
of that. When I click on a profile, the default resolution and color mode that it pulls up was the default that it was intended for. It does allow us for us to change it. So for example, if I just took out the white and the metallic and I just decided to do light cyan, light magenta, probably not going to make that big of a difference. But if I decided to, choose some other mode, if I only had like a CMYK option, for example, then that might not work so great for me because it was really programmed for light cyan and light magenta. So
right. Yeah, that's an important point. Yeah, ICC profiles, when they're made, they're printed with one print mode, and so they're really optimized for a unique single print mode. And you can change the print mode, so it's optimized, and it was designed for like 300 dpi. We can print 600 dpi with it, but it's not going to look as good as 300 dpi because it was made for 300 dpi.
Exactly. And so one of the things that we try and make as many good profiles as we can. Typically, our profiles tend to be in the mid-tier to higher quality range because that's what most people are looking for. But if you were looking for a different print mode, this is where you might start to consider getting into the idea of creating your own profiles. And we'll talk about this a little bit later on in some of the next coming weeks about, what devices you should be using and that kind of stuff. And what are the advantages of doing that? But, that might be something to consider if a different profile mode is needed and it's not available.
Right. Yeah. We'll go into all the benefits of having your own measurement device and doing your own profiles. So this is really easy to get to. Can we go back to the presentation?
Yep.
Okay. So next one here. Next slide. All right, so when you download a zip file, a lot of these websites that you go to get profiles, some of them will just have a zip file per printer, which is the same thing that we have. And it's like, okay, so what's going on here? You look at these different names, and sometimes people get confused what all these different these names mean. And as we were saying earlier, each ICC profile is specifically optimized for a specific printer, ink, media, resolution, and speed. So you always want to try to find the closest match. The most important closest match you want to look for is at least the media. You don't ever want to select like a matte profile and use it on a glossy media, or vice versa, or you know, a shiny vinyl, a glossy vinyl on a luster vinyl. You're gonna have all kinds of gray balance and color issues with that. So at a bare minimum, make sure that you're at least using a profile that closely matches the same media type that you have on your printer, and always select the closest match profile when you actually go to print. All right. Okay, so know before you print. We're going to talk a little bit about the new Flexi sample image here, and some things that you want to look for. So Flexi comes with a sample image, a sample test image, and you can use that just to get an idea of what it's going to look like before you print any jobs. So the workflow here is that you make sure your settings are correct, and then you open up this image in Flexi and you print this sample image out, okay? Before you do any actual production work, make sure that that media profile is going to look good on your media the first time you try it. So print this image out. It's a sample image. And we're going to look in that top left corner, and we're specifically going to look at these different areas in that print, okay? First thing you want to look at is your primary colors. That red there, that's 100% magenta and yellow. So that's going to be your best red. So that better look really good as a red. Look at your yellows. Does the yellow have a little bit of cyan in it? You've got a problem there potentially. You've got your different blacks. Also look for consistent hues. A lot of people, they get a good red, but then, you know, their mid-tone reds, they blow out and they turn orange. So when you print this out, make sure that you've got a nice rich red all the way up the top. Also look on the side here for your gray balance. We've got the CMY gray balance. We've got CMYK. We've got K balance, you know, the K of gray. We want to make sure that the CMY gray is similar to the neutral K gray. Now, a swap or a grackle gray is going to be a little brown. It's going to be a little what we call warm. That's okay. But if you've got hue shifts in there, if it's like brown and then goes green or pink, and you've got hue shifts in that, you're going to have problems when you actually do production work on that media with this profile. So we're checking the profile here, and you're going to have problems. So we'll get to how you can solve these problems. But if it looks good here, you're going to be okay with all of your production work. Let's go
and at the end, we'll also show you where that file is located as well.
That's correct. That's correct. We'll show you how to get this file, and you can actually open and print it yourself. All right, next slide. Questions. Okay, so we're going to see if there's any questions. We're just getting started. We have 2 more parts. This is a 3-part trilogy, and this is just the beginning. Next week, we're going to be talking about other things like spot color matching and ICC profile making. Are there any questions on the basic workflow?
So that was one of the first questions, so we might as well address that here and now. So I'm going to show you guys where you're going to find that image. Now, this particular image is actually not in our default install quite yet, but if you want this specific image, we can get it to you. We will make sure that tech support has it, and we can send it out if needed. And we'll also make sure that Bennett here, who's with questions and stuff, he has it, so that if you ask a question on Facebook or something like that, we can send it out to you. But by default, we're going to go to the C drive, and we're going to go to the program files, and we're going to go to the SAI folder, and any one of these folders will have it, but you go into the SAI, and then we're going to go to samples.
Right, yeah. Yeah, there's a sample file, samples
folder right here. So samples, and when I scroll down to the bottom, here's our SAI color tester.
Excellent.
I'm going to go ahead and open it and show you guys what it looks like. Again,
that one's from 20.
A little bit different. This is one of our older ones. Eventually, we'll have the other one in our software. But this essentially has the same things that
that's right.
One has.
It's very similar.
Right, it's very similar. So it's got our gray balances, our CM1Ks, our red, our color wheels, our primary colors, a lot of the same things as here, just a little bit older version, but it accomplishes basically the same thing.
Yeah. And, you know, sample images are out there, and they all pretty much have similar things in them with the RGB and the CMYK and the gray balance wedges and the solid colors.
Right.
And
The flesh
again,
tones and things like that.
exactly.
Yep.
And again, what this is for is you've got a media. Maybe you've never used this media before. You may not have a profile. You've just downloaded a profile. Before you start printing production work to it, open this image up and just print this image out and look at it and see if it looks okay. If it looks okay, you're good to go. If it doesn't, there's some issues with your color, and we're gonna troubleshoot some of those issues next week. Are there any
Yeah. And
other questions?
yeah, do we have any other questions? Looks like no questions so far. So either
Great.